Discount ticket and still dreaming of first class, huh? Marcus sneered, shooting a sideways glare at the black woman making her way toward seat 1A, one hand still balancing a tray of champagne for the white passenger behind her. Amara, her silver hair swept into an elegant bun, carried a worn leather bag without a single logo as she walked past him with an unnerving calmness, as if the insult tossed her way were nothing more than a scrap of trash blown by the wind. No jewelry, no perfume, no entourage, no ostentatious display of wealth, yet every step she took seemed to emit a quiet resonance that made the entire cabin momentarily pause. Marcus pinched her boarding pass between two fingers like it was something contaminated, flipped it back and forth under scrutinizing eyes, then let it drop onto the leather seat with a dismissive clatter, as if discarding some foreign object. He turned to a white gentleman nearby, smiling politely while pouring him champagne and addressing him as Sir. Without a word, Amara took her seat, opened her laptop, and began typing the first lines of a document titled Customer Service Audit, Confidential, while her smartwatch buzzed relentlessly with urgent messages from legal counsel, board chair, and FAA liaison. They thought they were handling just another troublesome passenger, but in truth, they had just awakened a storm that was about to wipe out their entire crew. The Boeing 7777 continues its boarding process as Amara arranges her belongings in the spacious first-class compartment. She pulls out her laptop, its screen briefly displaying financial charts, before she angles it away from prying eyes. Her phone buzzes with messages from contacts labeled board chair and legal counsel, but she keeps her responses brief and professional. Marcus moves through the cabin with theatrical efficiency, his attention lavished on every passenger except her. When the elderly white businessman in 2A requests champagne, Marcus produces it with a flourish and engaging small talk. When the young tech executive in 1B asks about the wine selection, Marcus launches into a detailed explanation of the vintage options. Amara raises her hand politely. "Excuse me, could I have some sparkling water, please?" Marcus glances over with visible irritation, as if her request has interrupted something important. "We'll get to everyone," he replies curtly, then immediately turns back to the tech executive to discuss meal preferences. 20 minutes pass. Amara watches as every other first-class passenger receives drinks, warm towels, and attentive service. When Marcus finally approaches her seat, he places a plastic cup of tap water on her tray table with a thud. "Thank you," Amara says, evenly, though she had clearly requested sparkling water. "Is there a problem?" Marcus asks, his tone suggesting she should be grateful for any service at all. "Not at all." Amara's voice remains steady, professional. She takes a measured sip and returns to her laptop, where she opens a document titled Customer Service Assessment Protocol. The businessman in 2A, Robert Sterling, leans forward with the confidence of someone accustomed to being heard. "The standards really have declined, haven't they?" he says loudly enough for the surrounding seats to hear. "You pay premium prices and get, well, you know what you get these days." Marcus nods knowingly. "We try to maintain our standards, sir. But sometimes people find ways to game the system." Sarah Chen, a junior flight attendant, approaches with the pre-flight amenity kit distribution. She moves efficiently through the cabin, placing luxury bags at each seat. When she reaches Amara, she hesitates, glancing back at Marcus. "Should I?" she begins quietly. "Just give her the regular one," Marcus whispers, loud enough for Amara to hear. Sarah reluctantly places a smaller, clearly inferior amenity kit beside Amara's water. Amara opens her phone and begins typing notes with precise timestamps. Her messages include detailed observations. 1432. Discriminatory service patterns observed. Staff member MT, demonstrating clear bias in treatment protocols. Another message appears on her screen from someone listed as Crisis Management Team. She types back quickly, proceeding with assessment. Document everything. Do not intervene yet. The cabin begins to fill with the anticipation of departure. Marcus announces over the intercom that they're experiencing a slight delay due to additional security protocols that need to be reviewed. His eyes rest meaningly on Amara as he makes this announcement. David Kim, a software engineer in seat 2B, notices the disparity in treatment. He glances between Marcus's attentive service to other passengers and his obvious neglect of Amara. When Marcus passes by again, David speaks up. "Excuse me, I think the lady in 1A requested sparkling water, not tap water." Marcus's expression hardens. "Sir, I assure you we're handling all passenger requests appropriately. Perhaps you should focus on your own service needs." The temperature in the cabin seems to drop. Other passengers begin to notice the tension, some shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Mrs. Eleanor Johnson, an elegant black woman in her 70s seated in 3C, watches the interaction with the keen eye of someone who has witnessed such scenarios before. Amara continues her work, occasionally taking photos of her substandard service items compared to those provided to other passengers. Her phone shows incoming calls from high-level contacts, but she lets them go to voicemail, preferring to document the experience in real time. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus announces, "we'll be beginning our safety demonstration shortly. Please ensure all personal items are properly stowed and that you're prepared to give our crew your full attention and respect." The word respect carries unmistakable emphasis, and his gaze lingers once again on Amara. She meets his eyes calmly, her expression revealing nothing of the storm that's brewing beneath the surface. 30 minutes into the flight, the discrimination escalates from subtle to overt. Marcus approaches Amara's seat with a clipboard and an expression of bureaucratic authority. "Ma'am, I'm going to need to see some identification for security verification," he announces, loudly enough for half the cabin to hear. Amara looks up from her laptop. "Is there a specific concern?" "It's standard procedure for certain situations," Marcus replies, his pause loaded with implication. She produces her driver's license without argument. Marcus studies it with theatrical intensity, comparing the photo to her face multiple times. He holds it up to the light, as if checking for forgeries. "Dr. Amara Williams," he reads aloud. "And what kind of doctor are you?" "Business administration," she replies calmly. Robert Sterling snorts from his seat. "Of course. One of those fake doctorates they hand out these days." Marcus returns the ID with obvious reluctance. "I'll need to verify this ticket purchase. There have been issues with fraudulent transactions lately." "I understand your concern for security," Amara responds, her tone remaining professional despite the obvious harassment. While Marcus walks away, supposedly to verify her ticket, Amara discreetly opens her phone's recording app. She then calls a number listed as legal counsel. "This is Dr. Williams," she says quietly. "Yes, I'm documenting everything." "No, let them continue. This will be educational for everyone involved." Sarah approaches hesitantly with the meal service cart. Other passengers have already received their appetizers, but when she reaches Amara, the options seem mysteriously limited. "We only have the chicken available for you," Sarah says apologetically, though Amara can clearly see beef and fish options still on the cart. "The chicken will be fine," Amara replies graciously. When the meal arrives, it's noticeably different from those served to other passengers. Where others received garnished plates with multiple courses, Amara's meal consists of a single piece of dry chicken with minimal sides. David Kim, who ordered the same chicken option, compares his elaborate presentation to Amara's sparse plate. "This doesn't seem right," he mutters, photographing both meals with his phone. Marcus returns with Captain Reynolds, a stern-faced man in his 50s who carries himself with military precision. They approach Amara's seat together, their body language suggesting an interrogation rather than customer service. "Dr. Williams," Marcus begins, his voice dripping with skepticism. "We've had some concerns raised about your behavior during this flight." Amara sets down her fork carefully. What specific concerns? Reports of disruptive conduct, failure to comply with crew instructions, and suspicious activity, Captain Reynolds states flatly. I've been working quietly at my seat, Amara responds. Could you specify which crew instructions I've allegedly failed to follow? The two men exchange glances. Marcus clears his throat. Your attitude has been confrontational, and frankly, some passengers have expressed concern about your presence in this cabin, speaks up from 3C. That's absolutely ridiculous. This woman has been nothing but polite, despite your deplorable treatment. Ma'am, please don't interfere, Captain Reynolds warns. We're handling a security matter. Amara remains seated, her posture straight and dignified. Gentlemen, I'm happy to address any legitimate concerns you might have. However, I believe what you're describing as disruptive behavior is simply my presence in a seat I legally purchased. These accusations are becoming quite serious, she continues, pulling out her phone. Perhaps it would be wise to document this conversation for everyone's protection. Marcus's face reddens. You cannot record crew members without permission. Actually, Mrs. Johnson interjects, federal law permits recording of potential discrimination incidents. I should know. I'm a retired federal judge. The cabin has grown quiet, with passengers openly watching the confrontation. Some have their phones out, capturing the interaction. The tension becomes palpable as Marcus realizes he's losing control of the situation. Dr. Williams, Captain Reynolds says firmly, I'm going to have to ask you to stop this disruptive behavior immediately, or we'll have to consider alternative measures. Amara's phone buzzes with an incoming call. The screen shows board chair. She declines the call and looks up at the two men standing over her. I understand you feel I'm being disruptive, she says, calmly. Perhaps you could explain exactly which federal aviation regulations I'm violating by sitting quietly in my assigned seat? The confrontation reaches its crescendo as Marcus decides to make a public spectacle. He moves to the intercom system, his finger hovering over the button that will broadcast his voice throughout the cabin. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your head flight attendant speaking. His voice carries a tone of practiced authority. We're experiencing a seating irregularity that requires immediate attention. Every conversation stops. Passengers crane their necks to see what's happening. Amara remains seated, her hands folded calmly in her lap, though those close enough can see the slight tension in her jaw. Dr. Williams, Marcus announces, returning to her seat with theatrical flourish. There's been an error with your ticket. We're going to need you to relocate to the main cabin where your seat is properly assigned. My boarding pass clearly indicates seat 1A, Amara responds, producing the document again. Marcus waves dismissively. Ma'am, we have reason to believe this ticket wasn't purchased through legitimate channels. These premium seats are reserved for our valued customers who actually belong here. The words hang in the air like poison. Robert Sterling immediately joins the attack. Finally, someone with backbone. These people always try to scam their way into first class. I've seen it dozens of times. As the humiliation peaks, Amara's mind drifts to another time, another place. She's 25 again, standing in a Harvard Business School classroom where a professor questioned whether she belonged there. She remembers the scholarship that made her education possible, earned through academic excellence despite systemic barriers. The flashback continues to her first corporate job, where she was often the only black woman in boardrooms filled with men who questioned her every contribution. She recalls the moment she decided to build her own empire, rather than fight for acceptance in someone else's. Years of strategic acquisitions flashed through her memory. Small aviation companies, maintenance facilities, eventually entire airlines. Each purchase was careful, calculated, building an empire while maintaining a deliberately low profile. Ma'am, Captain Reynolds joins Marcus beside her seat. I'm going to have to insist you comply with crew instructions. If you refuse, we'll have no choice but to contact authorities upon landing. Amara stands slowly, her 5'6" frame somehow commanding the attention of everyone in the cabin. Her voice, when she speaks, carries the weight of decades in corporate leadership. "I understand your concern about passenger comfort," she says, each word carefully measured. "I assure you, I belong exactly where I am." David Kim stands up, his phone clearly recording. "This is blatant discrimination, and I'm documenting every word. This woman has done nothing wrong. Sir, sit down immediately or you'll be removed as well," Marcus threatens, his voice rising. Mrs. Johnson speaks with the authority of her judicial background. "Young man, you are violating multiple federal civil rights statutes. I strongly advise you to reconsider your actions." "With all due respect, ma'am, this is an airline matter, not a courtroom," Captain Reynolds responds dismissively. Amara reaches into her purse and retrieves a small leather folder. She opens it briefly, studies its contents, then closes it with a slight smile. "Captain Reynolds, Marcus," she says, her voice carrying a new undertone of authority, "I believe there's been a significant misunderstanding about the nature of this situation." Marcus scoffs. "Ma'am, the only misunderstanding is your belief that you can intimidate trained professionals with threats and attitude. These people," Robert Sterling adds loudly, "always think they deserve special treatment. This isn't welfare, this is first class." The racial undertone is unmistakable. Several passengers gasp audibly. Others shift uncomfortably, realizing they're witnessing something that will likely become national news. Amara's phone rings. She glances at the screen. Assistant CEO, office, and makes a decision that will change everything. "Excuse me, gentlemen," she says politely. "I need to take this call. It's rather urgent." She answers the phone and her assistant's voice carries clearly in the silent cabin. "Dr. Williams, the emergency board meeting is ready to convene. Also, the FAA administrator is returning your call about the discrimination incident you're documenting." The color drains from Marcus's face. Captain Reynolds freezes mid-gesture. The cabin becomes so quiet that the hum of the engines seems deafening. "Thank you, Jennifer," Amara responds calmly. "Please tell the board I'll be conducting a full review of our customer service protocols following this flight. And yes, please connect me with the FAA. I have quite a bit to report." The revelation hangs in the air for exactly 3 seconds before Marcus attempts damage control. His face cycles through confusion, denial, and growing panic as the implications begin to register. "I'm sorry, did you say Dr. Williams?" he stammers, though he's heard her name multiple times during the flight. Captain Reynolds steps forward, his military bearing intact, but his confidence visibly shaken. "Ma'am, I think there might be some confusion here." Amara ends her call and regards both men with the patience of someone accustomed to dealing with subordinates who've made catastrophic errors. "No confusion at all, Captain. My name is Dr. Amara Williams. I'm the Chief Executive Officer and majority shareholder of Skyline Aviation Holdings." She pauses to let this information sink in. "We own this airline." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. His mouth opens and closes soundlessly as he processes the fact that he's just spent an hour discriminating against his ultimate boss. That's not possible," he whispers. Amara calmly retrieves her tablet and opens the corporate directory. Her photograph appears at the top of the organizational chart, with a clear line of authority flowing down to subsidiary companies, including the airline they're currently flying on. Robert Sterling, who has been loudly supporting the discrimination, suddenly finds his voice has vanished. He sinks deeper into his seat, apparently wishing he could disappear entirely. Sarah Chen, the junior flight attendant, covers her mouth in horror. She's been reluctantly following Marcus's lead, and now realizes she's participated in discriminating against the person who signs her paychecks. "Dr. Williams," Captain Reynolds attempts, his voice now respectful but desperate. "If there's been a misunderstanding—" "Oh, there's been no misunderstanding, Captain," Amara interrupts gently. "I've been conducting an unannounced quality assessment of our customer service standards. The results have been quite illuminating." She addresses the cabin at large, her voice carrying the natural authority of someone accustomed to speaking to boardrooms and auditoriums. "Ladies and gentlemen, I want to apologize for the disruption you've witnessed. What you've seen today represents exactly the kind of discriminatory behavior that has no place in our company or in the aviation industry. Marcus finds his voice, though it cracks with desperation. Dr. Williams, we didn't know. I mean, if we had realized— Marcus, Amara says, using his name for the first time. The fact that you didn't know who I was is precisely the point. Your behavior toward me, and I suspect toward other passengers who don't fit your personal definition of belonging in first class, is unacceptable, regardless of my position. She pulls out her phone and dials a number. Jennifer, please connect me to Linda in Human Resources. The call connects, and Amara speaks clearly enough for the nearby seats to hear. Linda, this is Amara. I need immediate documentation for a discrimination incident involving employee Marcus Thompson. Badge number— she glances at his name tag. 4739. Multiple violations of company policy and federal civil rights laws. Marcus's legs seem to give out. He grabs the seat back for support as the reality of his situation crashes down on him. Dr. Williams, please, he begs. I have a family. I need this job. I didn't mean anything by it. Marcus, you told me I didn't belong in first class. You fabricated security concerns. You provided substandard service based solely on your assumptions about my race and worthiness. Which part didn't you mean? Captain Reynolds attempts to salvage the situation. Dr. Williams, perhaps we can resolve this internally. No need to involve— Captain, Amara cuts him off. You threatened to have me arrested for terrorist threats, based entirely on false reports. You violated multiple FAA regulations regarding passenger treatment. This isn't going away quietly. She makes another call, this time to the legal department. This is Dr. Williams. I need our discrimination response team activated immediately. Yes. Federal civil rights violations. Multiple witnesses, extensive documentation. David Kim, who has been recording everything, speaks up. Dr. Williams, I've captured this entire incident on video. I'd be happy to provide it as evidence. Thank you, Mr. Kim. David Kim. And I just want to say, what I witnessed today was absolutely disgusting. No one should be treated the way you were treated. Mrs. Johnson nods approvingly. Dr. Williams, your composure throughout this ordeal has been remarkable. In my 40 years on the federal bench, I've seen far too many cases like this. I'm prepared to provide testimony if needed. Amara's phone rings again. Yes, Jennifer? Yes, contact operations immediately. I want this plane diverted to the nearest major airport. All passengers need to be deplaned with full compensation and formal apologies. She looks directly at Marcus, whose career is evaporating in real time. You see, Marcus, discrimination doesn't just hurt the victim. It damages the entire organization. Every passenger on this flight is now a witness to your behavior. Every one of them will remember this airline as the place where they watched a black woman get humiliated by racist staff members. But more importantly, she continues, her voice carrying both steel and sadness, they'll remember us as the airline that immediately took action to correct the situation and ensure it never happens again. Marcus collapses into a nearby empty seat, his head in his hands. My career is over. Your career in aviation is over, Amara confirms. But Marcus, this is also an opportunity. You can choose to learn from this experience, examine your biases, and become someone who fights discrimination instead of perpetuating it. Captain Reynolds makes one last desperate attempt. Dr. Williams, I was just trying to support my crew. I didn't personally— Captain, you called me a security threat without investigation. You supported false accusations and threatened me with arrest. The fact that you were just following orders doesn't absolve you of responsibility for your actions. Sarah Chen, who has been silent through most of the exchange, finally speaks through tears. Dr. Williams, I'm so sorry. I knew what was happening was wrong, but I was afraid to speak up. I should have defended you. Amara's expression softened slightly. Sarah, fear is understandable. But silence in the face of discrimination makes you complicit. The question now is what you'll do differently next time. The plane begins its descent toward an unscheduled landing, as Amara continues making calls to implement immediate policy changes across the entire airline network. The cabin atmosphere shifts dramatically as Amara fully steps into her role as CEO. Gone is any pretense of being just another passenger. Her every movement now carries the weight of corporate authority and moral certainty. Ladies and gentlemen, she announces, standing in the aisle so everyone can see her clearly. My name is Dr. Amara Williams, and I own this airline. What you've witnessed today is a discrimination incident that violates every value our company claims to represent. She produces her corporate identification, holding it up for passengers to see. The gold-embossed card clearly identifies her as Chief Executive Officer of Skyline Aviation Holdings, with subsidiary companies listed below, including the very airline they're flying on. I was traveling incognito today to assess our service quality firsthand. Unfortunately, what I discovered is a systemic problem that requires immediate and comprehensive action. Marcus remains slumped in his emergency seat, his face buried in his hands. Captain Reynolds stands at attention like a soldier awaiting court-martial. The transformation in their demeanor is complete, from aggressive authority figures to terrified subordinates. Amara's phone buzzes with an incoming call from the chairman of the board. She answers on speaker, her voice professional and controlled. James, this is Amara. Yes, I'm fine. No, this cannot wait until we land. I need an emergency board session convened within the hour. The voice on the other end is clearly concerned. What's the situation, Amara? I've just documented the most blatant case of racial discrimination I've encountered in 20 years of business. Our head flight attendant and captain have violated federal civil rights laws, company policy, and basic human decency. She continues, her voice carrying throughout the silent cabin. Every passenger on this flight has witnessed our employees telling me I don't belong in first class, threatening me with arrest, and providing deliberately inferior service based solely on my race. Jesus Christ, the chairman's voice comes through clearly. What do you need? Full legal team activation, media response preparation, and I want comprehensive reviews of every discrimination complaint filed in the past 5 years. We're going to clean house, James. Marcus finally looks up, his eyes red with tears. Dr. Williams, please. I'll do anything. Sensitivity training, community service, anything you ask. Amara regards him with the composure of someone who has faced down hostile boardrooms and emerged victorious. Marcus, you told a 60-year-old black woman that she was probably using stolen credit cards to buy first-class tickets. You announced to an entire cabin that people like me don't belong in premium seating. What exactly do you think sensitivity training can fix about that level of racism? She turned to Captain Reynolds. Captain, you threatened to have me arrested for terrorism based on completely fabricated reports. You violated FAA regulations, company policy, and federal civil rights law. Your pilot's license will be suspended pending investigation. But Dr. Williams, he begins. The FAA will conduct a full review of your actions today. I've already initiated that process. She shows him her phone screen, which displays a call log with multiple federal agencies. They take discrimination in aviation very seriously, especially when it involves false accusations of terrorism. David Kim stands up, his phone still recording. Dr. Williams, I want you to know that what I witnessed today was completely unacceptable. I'll gladly serve as a witness in any legal proceedings. Thank you, Mr. Kim. Your willingness to speak up when you saw injustice is exactly the kind of courage we need more of. Mrs. Johnson adds her voice. Dr. Williams, In my 4 decades as a federal judge, I've seen discrimination cases that seemed clear-cut get dismissed due to lack of witnesses. Today you have an entire cabin of witnesses, multiple recordings, and documented evidence. This is as solid a civil rights case as I've ever seen. Amara nods gratefully. Mrs. Johnson, your legal expertise is invaluable. I'd be honored if you'd consider joining our newly formed Civil Rights Advisory Board. She makes another call, this time to the airline's operations center. This is Dr. Williams. I need immediate implementation of Code 7 protocols across all flights. She pauses, listening. Yes, that's correct. System-wide discrimination response. Every employee needs to be reminded that we serve all passengers with equal dignity and respect. Robert Sterling, who has been conspicuously silent since the revelation, finally speaks in a trembling voice. Dr. Williams, I apologize for my comments. I was completely out of line. Mara turns to face him directly. Mr. Sterling, your comments weren't just out of line. They were racist. You actively participated in my humiliation, cheering on discriminatory treatment. A simple apology doesn't undo the harm caused by your words. But I didn't know. You didn't know what? That I'm a successful business owner? That I have a doctorate degree? That I've built a career through merit rather than handouts? Her voice carries decades of facing down such assumptions. Mr. Sterling, your racism wasn't triggered by my status. It was triggered by my skin color. That's the problem we need to address. She pulls up her tablet and opens a company-wide communication system. Her fingers move quickly across the screen as she types an urgent message to all employees. I'm sending immediate notification to every employee in our network. Today's incident will serve as a case study in our mandatory retraining programs. Every employee will understand exactly what discrimination looks like and why it will not be tolerated. Sarah Chen approaches hesitantly. Dr. Williams, I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I want you to know that I'll never stay silent again when I witness discrimination. Sarah, you're young and you were afraid. I understand that. But fear cannot be an excuse for complicity. If you truly want to make amends, become an advocate. Speak up when you see bias. Protect other passengers from experiencing what I experienced today. The plane begins its final approach to the emergency landing destination. Amara addresses the cabin one final time before landing. Ladies and gentlemen, you've all been inconvenienced today because of the discriminatory actions of our crew. Each of you will receive full compensation for this flight, vouchers for future travel, and a formal written apology from our company. She pauses, making eye contact with passengers throughout the cabin. But more importantly, you've been witnesses to both the problem and the solution. Discrimination thrives in silence. It dies in the light of truth and accountability. Marcus looks up one final time. Dr. Williams, is there any chance, any possibility of redemption? Amara considers his question carefully. Marcus, redemption isn't something I can give you. It's something you have to earn through sustained action and genuine change. But that journey starts with acknowledging the full scope of what you've done here today. As the plane touches down, Amara's phone rings with calls from federal investigators, civil rights organizations, and media outlets. The story is already beginning to spread, and the consequences are just beginning to unfold. The plane rolls to a stop at the gate, and the consequences begin immediately. Amara remains calm and professional as she coordinates the systematic dismantling of the careers that participated in her discrimination. Airport security boards the aircraft first, followed by representatives from the airline's legal department, human resources, and federal investigators. The cabin that once hummed with normal travel activity now resembles a crime scene, with officials documenting evidence and interviewing witnesses. Marcus Thompson sits in stunned silence as HR Director Linda Morrison approaches with termination paperwork. His 23-year career with the airline ends with a signature on a pink slip. The irony isn't lost on anyone that his own discrimination has cost him the job he thought he was protecting from undeserving passengers. "Mr. Thompson?" Linda states formally. "You are terminated immediately for violation of company policy, federal civil rights laws, and conduct unbecoming of an airline employee. Your benefits are suspended pending legal review, and you are banned from all company property." Marcus's personnel file, when reviewed, reveals a disturbing pattern. Over the past 5 years, he's been the subject of 17 customer complaints, 14 of which involved passengers of color. Previous management had dismissed these as isolated incidents or misunderstandings. Under Amara's leadership, they now represent clear evidence of systemic discrimination. "How did no one see this pattern?" Amara asks Linda quietly. "The complaints were handled at the regional level. Apparently, Marcus had a reputation for maintaining standards that management interpreted as dedication to service excellence. Captain Reynolds faces even more severe consequences. The FAA investigation begins immediately, with federal inspectors reviewing his flight records, training certifications, and passenger incident reports. His pilot's license is suspended pending a full review, effectively grounding him indefinitely. Captain Reynolds, the lead FAA investigator, explains. Making false accusations against passengers and threatening arrest based on fabricated security concerns are serious violations of federal aviation regulations. Your actions today constitute gross misconduct that puts your continued certification in jeopardy. The financial implications extend beyond individual careers. Robert Sterling, the businessman who loudly supported the discrimination, discovers that his comments have been recorded and are already spreading on social media. His own company's board calls an emergency meeting as corporate sponsors distance themselves from his racist remarks. Sarah Chen receives a different fate, suspended with mandatory retraining and probation, but not terminated. Her youth and obvious remorse, combined with her willingness to acknowledge wrongdoing, earn her a second chance under strict supervision. "Sarah," Amara tells her privately, "you have an opportunity that Marcus and Captain Reynolds don't. You can learn from this experience and become part of the solution. Don't waste it." The ripple effects extend throughout the aviation industry. News of the incident spreads rapidly through professional networks, with Marcus and Captain Reynolds becoming cautionary tales about the consequences of workplace discrimination. Their names become associated with a landmark case that reshapes industry training protocol. Within 48 hours, Marcus faces a cascade of consequences. His professional reputation is destroyed, making him unemployable in aviation. Legal bills mount as federal investigators pursue civil rights violations. His airline pension and benefits are frozen pending the outcome of multiple lawsuits. "I never thought," he tells his wife that evening, sitting in their kitchen with termination papers spread across the table. "I never realized how it would sound. How it would look. You never realized that treating someone like garbage based on their skin color was wrong?" she responds, her voice heavy with disappointment. "Marcus, I don't even know who you are anymore." Captain Reynolds suffers similar consequences, but with additional professional implications. Losing his pilot's license destroys not just his current career, but his entire professional identity. At 54 years old, he faces the prospect of starting over in a completely different field. The legal ramifications prove severe. Federal prosecutors review the case for potential criminal charges related to false imprisonment and civil rights violations. While criminal charges are ultimately not filed, the civil lawsuit proceeds with devastating effect. Mrs. Johnson, the retired federal judge, provides expert testimony about the severity of the discrimination. "In 40 years on the bench, I've rarely seen such clear-cut evidence of racial bias combined with abuse of authority," she states in her deposition. David Kim's video evidence becomes crucial documentation of the incident. His clear recording captures not just the discriminatory actions, but also the systemic nature of the bias, with multiple crew members and passengers participating in or enabling the harassment. The airline industry as a whole takes notice. Other carriers begin immediate reviews of their own discrimination complaint procedures, fearing similar exposure. The incident becomes a Harvard Business School case study in corporate crisis management and civil rights compliance. Marcus attempts to find work in other service industries, but discovers that his termination for discrimination has made him essentially unemployable. His name appears in industry databases that track employees terminated for cause, effectively blacklisting him from similar positions. 23 years of service, he reflects bitterly to a friend, destroyed in 30 minutes. No, Marcus, his friend responds. Your service was destroyed by 23 years of treating people badly. Today just made it visible. The financial settlements prove substantial. Amara's lawsuit against the individual employees results in significant personal judgments, while the airline's corporate settlement includes policy changes, monitoring protocols, and substantial charitable contributions to civil rights organizations. Most devastating of all is the personal reckoning each perpetrator faces. Marcus's family struggles with the revelation of his racist behavior. Captain Reynolds's military veteran friends express disgust at his actions. The social consequences prove as damaging as the professional one. I thought I was just doing my job, Marcus tells a court-appointed counselor during mandatory sensitivity training. I thought I was protecting the airline's standards. Whose standards were you protecting, Marcus? The counselor asks. And who did you think needed protecting from? The answer, when it finally comes, reveals the depth of bias that had been hidden beneath a veneer of professionalism for decades. 3 months after the incident, Dr. Amara Williams sits in her corner office overlooking Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson Airport. The morning sun streams through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating photographs that chronicle her remarkable journey from scholarship student to aviation industry leader. The discrimination incident has transformed from personal nightmare into systemic change catalyst. Amara's company now serves as the industry standard for inclusive practices, with other airlines requesting consultations on bias prevention and response protocols. Her assistant Jennifer enters with the daily briefing. The Washington Post wants to interview you about the congressional testimony next week, and we've received 437 applications for the new Civil Rights Fellowship program. Amara nods, reviewing the morning reports. Customer satisfaction scores have increased by 28% since the policy changes were implemented. Employee retention has improved, and the company has received recognition from multiple civil rights organizations for its transformative response to discrimination. What's the status on Marcus Thompson? Amara asks quietly. He completed the court-ordered sensitivity training. He's been volunteering with a community organization that teaches conflict resolution to at-risk youth. His counselor says the experience has been humbling. A soft knock interrupts their conversation. Sarah Chen stands in the doorway, wearing a crisp new uniform with additional stripes indicating her promotion to senior flight attendant and diversity liaison. Dr. Williams, do you have a moment? Of course, Sarah, come in. Sarah enters, carrying a folder of documentation. I wanted to update you on the passenger advocacy program. We've successfully intervened in 12 potential discrimination incidents this quarter, preventing them from escalating. Amara smiles. You've become exactly the advocate I hoped you'd become. Dr. Williams, I need you to know something. Sarah's voice carries weight beyond her years. That day changed my life, not just my career, my entire understanding of what it means to be complicit in injustice. I'll never be silent again. After Sarah leaves, Amara turns back to the window, watching planes taxi across the tarmac. Each aircraft represents thousands of human interactions, opportunities for dignity or discrimination to flourish. Her phone buzzes with a text from David Kim, who has become an unlikely friend and ally. The message includes a photo of him speaking at a corporate diversity training session with the caption, using my privilege to amplify your message. Thank you for teaching me what courage looks like. Mrs. Johnson has joined the company's Civil Rights Advisory Board, bringing 4 decades of judicial experience to policy development. Her presence ensures that legal compliance goes beyond minimum requirements to embrace genuine equity. The policy changes implemented after the incident have become comprehensive. Mandatory bias training occurs quarterly. Anonymous reporting systems allow employees and passengers to report discrimination safely. Diverse hiring initiatives have increased minority representation in management by 40%. Jennifer, Amara calls to her assistant, please arrange a call with the NAACP leadership. I want to discuss expanding our scholarship program. The Amara Williams Fellowship now provides full college funding for 50 students annually, focusing on aviation, business, and civil rights law. The program has received applications from students worldwide, many citing the discrimination incident as inspiration for pursuing careers in social justice. Amara reflects on the personal toll and triumph of the experience. The humiliation was real, painful, and traumatic, but the response has created systemic change that will protect countless future passengers from similar treatment. A framed letter sits on her desk from a young Black woman who recently graduated from the fellowship program. Dr. Williams, it reads, because of your courage to transform pain into purpose, I never experienced discrimination during my business school years. Thank you for making a path for those of us who follow. The incident has also sparked industry-wide transformation. The Federal Aviation Administration now requires annual civil rights training for all airline employees. Other transportation industries have adopted similar protocols. The ripple effect has touched millions of workers and passengers. Amara's congressional testimony next week will focus on systemic bias in transportation systems. Her recommendations, born from lived experience and corporate leadership, will influence federal policy for decades. The goal isn't punishment, she reflects to herself, reviewing her prepared remarks. The goal is prevention. We want to create systems where discrimination becomes impossible, not just illegal. Her phone displays a news alert about Robert Sterling, the passenger who supported her discrimination. He has quietly resigned from his corporate positions and enrolled in a racial justice education program. His transformation appears genuine, though it came at significant personal cost. Even Marcus Thompson's journey continues. His volunteer work with youth conflict resolution has earned recognition from community leaders. While his aviation career is over, he's discovered a calling in preventing the kind of bias he once perpetuated. Redemption, Amara muses aloud, isn't about forgiveness. It's about fundamental change in behavior and mindset. The afternoon brings a meeting with airline executives from across the industry, all seeking guidance on implementing similar civil rights protections. The incident that began as personal humiliation has become a masterclass in corporate responsibility and social justice. As the day ends, Amara stands again at her window, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new opportunities to advance dignity and justice in aviation and beyond. The next time you witness discrimination, whether subtle or overt, ask yourself this crucial question. Will you be like the silent passengers who looked away? Or will you be like David Kim and Mrs. Johnson, who stood up for what's right? You don't need to be a CEO to make a difference. Every voice matters. Every action counts. Every moment of courage creates ripples of change that extend far beyond what you can see in the moment. When someone tries to tell you that you don't belong somewhere, in first class, in a boardroom, in a leadership role, in any space you've earned the right to occupy, remember Dr. Amara Williams. Your dignity isn't determined by others' ignorance or bias. Real change happens when we refuse to accept that's just how things are. It happens when we document injustice, speak truth to power, and transform pain into purpose. It happens when we choose elevation over retaliation, justice over revenge. Take action in your own life. Record discrimination when you see it. Report bias when you encounter it. Support those who face harassment. Use your privilege to amplify marginalized voices. Create inclusive spaces in your workplace, community, and family. As Dr. Williams demonstrated, sometimes the most powerful response to discrimination isn't anger. It's strategic action guided by moral clarity. She turned a moment of humiliation into a movement for systemic change. Challenge yourself to go beyond passive sympathy. Become an active advocate for justice. Whether you're witnessing workplace bias, educational discrimination, or social prejudice, your response matters. Remember her words. They tried to diminish my humanity, but I chose to expand theirs. In a world that often chooses division, choose elevation. In systems that promote discrimination, promote dignity. The fight for equality isn't finished when the obvious battles are won. It continues in everyday moments, when ordinary people choose courage over comfort, justice over convenience. Be the change you want to see starting today. Because sometimes the most powerful person in the room is the one nobody expects. And sometimes that person is you.